It was 1991, and Arnold Copelson and Ann Copelson, two producers, brought me the script Falling Down, written by Ebby Rose Smith. And I thought it just kind of captured the whole zeitgeist of what was going on at that particular time in our world. And I found out later that it was a picture that had been turned down really by everybody. It was an unusual picture to be made by a studio. The tone was different and a little controversial. I don't think that picture would happen in a studio today. It would definitely be the independent arena. But I thought it was just too special and had to be made. You kind of have to remember the setting and the time. It was the end of the Cold War, and many of the major defense industry plants were all based here in LA. And when the wall came down and the Cold War ended, all of these people in the defense industry were given their pink slips and weren't needed anymore. So Falling Down told a story about an American whose life began to fall apart. This character, D-Fens, who was obviously a very patriotic man, had devoted his life to the defense industry and defending his country. But his job was gone, his family was gone, and when you lose those basic foundations, the rest starts to crumble.
I'm not economically viable.
He began to be alienated from the country that he loved so much, and he certainly was not politically correct, but he was saying a lot of things that some people feel, rightly or wrongly.
You come to my country, you take my money, you don't even have the grace to learn how to speak my language?
He didn't shy away from the amount of anger that is right under the surface in a lot of people, a lot of hostilities and a lot of resentments. Everybody's got his issues and his problems. Not many people are fully satisfied with how their lives have turned out. And you mix that in an intense urban situation where people are close together and something's gonna pop. And D-Fens was a guy who lost it. I think this was the problem about why the studios did not want to ever do Falling Down, because who's your protagonist? Are you really supporting this guy who's accused of abusing his wife or appears to be somewhat of a racist to some degree? I mean, who do you root for? But I wasn't worried about it too much, and I enjoy the challenge trying to win an audience over. It's dangerous, but I think what happened is audiences understood where this character was coming from. They didn't have to love him. They didn't have to say this was the right way, but they certainly could understand how you can possibly snap one day. And D-Fens, as he began to sort of look around at the absurdity of what his life had become, he abandoned his car and just began to walk across LA. He was on some other journey, and we didn't know where it was heading, but it was sort of like the lone cowboy, starting at one end of town and working his way through. I could see the theme of being similar to an old Western. And in walking across LA, he was introduced to ethnic groups that he never really had involved with, because in a car society, you pass through those areas. LA has been the background for so many movies, yet never that often do you really get a sense of what the culture is. Generally, you don't get to see the kind of cross-cultural section that this picture did. So I think it certainly gave you a better slice of what this city is and the mixture it's got.
You go now. No trouble. I stay. What do you think of that?
I like the Korean grocery scene a lot, which is a very humorous scene.
85 cents.
But could be interpreted as being racially provocative. And certainly when Falling Down came out, The Korean Grocers Association picketed and protested vehemently the portrayal of Korean grocers.
Drink, 85 cents. You pay or go.
But falling down was the vicarious thrill for everybody who ever went to a small market and saw the ridiculous prices.
Just standing up for my rights as a consumer.
Now these are Vietnam jungle boots. Cost you half as much, last you twice as long, and they're great for stomping queers.
And then the Army surplus store, that was the dark side. It showed that other extreme, just to remind you that here's that other far side and how dark it could be with a neo-Nazi hiding with ideas and beliefs a lot darker than any of ours.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Good. Good freedom of religion. Now you get the swing of it. Feels good to exercise your rights, doesn't it?
Once a death takes place and you've taken the life of somebody else, there's no way to come back. There is no true repentance. It was the culmination for D-Fens of all the anger and rage that you've seen building. And I think Ebby Rose Smith, the writer, intelligently chose to have him vent that energy on a despicable character. But nevertheless, there is no coming back. From that moment on, he is now on a completely self-destructive mission.
What were you gonna do?
I don't know. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
I think you know exactly what you were gonna do. You were gonna kill your wife and child.
No.
Yeah. And then you knew it would be too late to turn back. It would be real easy to turn the gun around on yourself.
I never thought that he was going to kill them. He just wanted to try to hold on to something that didn't exist anymore. The world had changed, and he wanted so much to return to a life in a world that existed before, and he couldn't. And that's why the very finale of pulling the gun out and then seeing that it's a water pistol was really committing suicide.
I would have got you.
He was disturbed and in pain and couldn't make sense of the world we're living in. That's the way it had to end. It seems like it's the fulfillment of all the characters. I think that a scene of reconciliation at the end wouldn't have worked. It would have been a cop-out. He's got to go. He's got to go. I always thought that this picture was closer to the pulse than we thought in terms of the kind of tensions that existed at that time. While we were shooting the picture, the Rodney King riots happened. It was a situation where Rodney King was abused by the Los Angeles Police Department, and then the officers were found not guilty and exonerated, and the city blew up. Completely blew up. And, one of my strongest memories that I'll never forget was literally finishing up the movie over in the San Fernando Valley, and the riots were in full bloom, and it was like a war zone, plumes of smoke across the city that were progressing towards the west side from downtown LA. When I got my family, I said, well, I think we should get out of here. So we went to the airport, and I remember driving to the airport across the mountains and looking out over the city. We saw these fires going all over, and sort of shaking my head and thinking how amazingly appropriate this film was at this time. My whole purpose, I guess, of making films is, of course, number one, to entertain. But, just like a whammy burger, I'd like to think that there's a little more food for thought after you've eaten the meal. So to come out of a movie like Falling Down and have, been thrilled, scared, laugh, and at the same time have some discussion, I think that's what the magic of films is.